So much of society is these expectations and ideals that are put onto us, and as kids, that can be incredibly overwhelming. And a lot of children, I think, repress a large part of themselves to fit into this mold.
Three, two, one,
After leaving the corporate 9 to 5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Welcome to a special episode where open discussion and vulnerability pave the way for greater understanding. Today, I am honored to have two remarkable guest speakers from actually the Happy Healing Shop community who bravely open up about their experiences of growing up as LGBTQ individuals. So please join me in welcoming Shaw and Davina as their courage and openness inspire us to embrace the diversity that enriches our lives and creates a brighter, more understanding and compassionate future. Hey, Shaw and Davina, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey,
So you guys, what I love about you guys is that we already kind of know each other just through the Happy Healing Shop community. And I got to know you guys over the months and actually over a year, I think, at this point. And it was just very fascinating getting to know what it was like for you guys being identifying as LGBTQ plus community. So can you start off with telling me or telling the listeners what you identify as?
So in terms of gender, I will say that I am a woman. In terms of like sexuality, that's like a conflicting thing for me to decide because growing up, I always knew I was bisexual. And then I had a period of time in my late teens, early 20s when I just thought I was a lesbian. And then I went back to bisexual. And then I kind of call myself like an old gay because when I was growing up, there weren't as many terms for people, which it's great now because then everybody, feels accepted. They have a place. But when the term pansexual came out, I felt like I identified with that. But then I know it is very offensive to some people in the transgender community. So I'm just like, I like people. That's what I identify as. I just like people.
I am a gay trans man. I don't know what else to say about that.
So I guess for people that don't know, is it like you were born female?
Yes, born female, transitioned to man.
Got it.
And then I am attracted to men, hence the gay part.
Okay. And did you guys know this as a kid? Well, I know for Davina, you kind of went like it was you knew when you were young, and then your feelings about it or what you identified kind of change over time and stuff like that. But for Shaw, did you feel when you were a kid you knew as well?
I definitely knew in a way. I just didn't really have the vocabulary for it because it was the 90s and I lived in a little town in the Midwest and no one talked about trans people at all. But I definitely knew that something was going on, and I had dysphoria since I was like maybe 5. So I knew, but didn't know exactly what it was, I suppose.
Yeah, and when people, like for example, Davina, you were saying like identified as bi, and then teen years lesbian. So some people when they hear that, they might think, oh, this person's just they just don't know who they are as a person, or they're just going through teenage years, just confused, going through that typical teenager phase. What are some misconceptions that you guys think, or you have experienced firsthand from people, what they thought about you?
I think the biggest misconception that I struggled with, especially in my early teens, when I had friends, especially female friends, that found out that I also liked women, they all assume that you want to date them. So that was my biggest struggle. Is it kind of put me in a place where I felt like I had to be mean to even my friends. I would have friends that are like, "Oh, I don't want to change in front of you," and I'd have to tell them, "Well, you're not my type, anyways, so there's nothing to worry about." It's almost like they make you feel bad about yourself, so you kind of react in the same way because you're young and you don't really know how to handle the situation. I feel like that was my biggest struggle, is feeling alienated and not feeling like I fit in with my own gender because they weren't accepting of my sexuality.
I've heard something very similar from a lot of people. Like it seems that for many people who aren't queer, when someone comes out, they don't know what to do with that, I think. And a lot of times, I think they default to it in a way being about them, like this person is attracted to me because they're attracted to my gender or something like that. I've noticed that a lot. I noticed that in high school with I had a few bisexual and lesbian friends as well, and they experienced the same thing.
Oh, so it's kind of like a fear of like, oh, great, he or she gonna hit on me now?
Yeah.
Right. I never would have thought about that at all. So thanks about that for sharing that. And during this time, I don't, what are some maybe hurtful things people have said to you, from whether it's family, friends, coworkers, or strangers? Because first of all, the teenage years are always awkward already. And I'm sure there might be other things that people have said because they didn't understand.
So I feel like, I don't know if it's just the area that I specifically grew up in, but I feel like it wasn't as looked down on. People, there's always people that get weirded out about things they don't understand, but I don't feel like I was ever judged growing up. I don't feel like I ever had anybody discriminate against me for liking women. Um, even my parents, growing up, I didn't know that it wasn't normal, or it was taboo for that time, because my parents never made it a big deal. I didn't know that not everybody was gay until junior high. And then I found out there were people that actually weren't gay. Because when you're like 8, 9, 10, you don't talk about things like that. It's junior high when that all hits. So I I was totally lost with that, but I don't feel like I was really discriminated against as much. Maybe the biggest thing is, if you hang out with like a group of men and like, oh yeah, you guys should make out because you like women, and, kind of objectifying you. I've noticed that a lot with bisexual women, or, lesbians, is sometimes men want that for their own enjoyment, but that's all I've ever encountered.
I didn't come out until a few years ago, so I was already an adult. So everything that I've experienced discrimination wise has been as an adult. But I've had it both ways, or like both sides of it, where people have been very cool about it and don't really care. And then I've also had people say some truly horrible things to me. And it is something that I've kind of had to just get used to. And just whenever I come out to someone, hope for the best, but be prepared for it going badly, I suppose.
So when that happens, when you meet new people, and that topic comes up, is it triggering, or is it like you go in, you're like, okay, this is it, but I can't control what they say, and you just crossed your fingers?
For me, it's been like, I'm fine telling people I'm gay, but I will only tell people I'm trans if I feel like they're a safe person, especially with everything that's going on right now regarding transgender people. It's gotten kind of scary in some places. So I kind of, when I do decide to tell someone I'm trans, I try to do it in a nonchalant way instead of being like, I'm trans, like, ta-da. I kind of just like slip it into conversation after I've already been talking to them for a while. And usually they're just like, okay.
Um, and for people or parents with children, do you have any advice for parents to, if their kid isn't sure about how they identify as, and they want to support their kid?
I think the best thing for kids in general is to let them explore things, whether it be hobbies or interests, their sexuality, their gender, because that's how you really discover yourself. So much of society is these expectations and ideals that are put onto us. And as kids, that can be incredibly overwhelming. And a lot of children, I think, repress a large part of themselves to fit into this mold. So I would say for parents, just support them in exploring. It doesn't have to be anything drastic. It can be as simple as changing their clothes or going by a different name or a nickname for a while if it has to do with their gender identity. And I think a lot of parents might be scared that it would go immediately to like medical transitioning, but usually, especially with children, it's always social transitioning, usually for several years before you even really look into anything deeper than that. And I think the social aspect is really important because that's how you really see if that's what feels good is, interacting with other people and exploring yourself through your interactions with others and with the wider world.
I feel like as a mom, I've kind of had firsthand experience with that already. My oldest, probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, she did come to me, and she did express that she thought that she might be transgender. And my biggest advice to her was exactly what Shaw said: just do what you want. I tried to help her figure it out without being dismissive. Um, so I asked her, do you not want this body part, or do you want this body part, or want um, do you want to just wear boys' clothes, or do you just not like to wear girls' clothes? Like, what what is making you feel this way? And so I just let her know, we can do the things that you want to do, but at this age, you don't really need to give yourself a label, because I feel like kids stress. They stress so much now about giving themselves a label. They all want a label now, because they don't know themselves. So now there's so many more options. So there's so many more labels that they try to adopt at a young age. So I just told her, just chill out and live your life. You have so many years. And I told her, I was like, I'm 30 years old and I still don't even know if I'm a lesbian. Okay. You got time.
These are really great points. It just kind of reminds me of like the experiment they did where they say, oh, if you put people, when you said there's many options now, if you put people in an ice cream shop with only 3 flavors, And then if you put someone in an ice cream shop with like 30 flavors, they're naturally going to be overwhelmed and end up not walking out with the ice cream flavor that they might not be satisfied with. So,
Mhm.
like when you were mentioning the many options, when you guys were growing up, and or even like Shaw, you um, discovered, I guess you said like a few years ago. So for you, it was like later in life. And what are do you think are some challenges that you faced that many people don't see or understand, even when you discovered this at an older age? Like, sometimes people think, well, adults can handle it better instead of a kid.
So like I said before, I definitely knew something was going on. And I think if I had the language for it, I would have been like, yes, this is. So I was always trans. I just couldn't really say to anybody that's what it was. And I didn't feel, as much as I loved my family, we never had this sort of relationship or rapport where I felt comfortable coming to anyone with what was going on. And I think that's a major thing for most young people who are questioning anything, is this need for a feeling of safety with whoever they come to with these questions. Um, but as an adult, it's weird. It felt like, I think, an even bigger deal than it would have as a kid for me personally. This doesn't necessarily apply to everyone who comes out later in life, but I had already been married at the time. I had pretty much my life was being built up, and then I knew that my husband at the time was going to want a divorce if I came out. And I was like, I have to still, I have to come out. And even though I know that's going to happen, because I will not be happy if I don't come out, if I don't start to transition. So when I did come out, he didn't take it very well that first day. Um, he thought I had been lying to him the whole time or something. I don't know, strange. But then he did some research and the next day he apologized. So
Oh.
it's like, at least you're, actually doing research, which a lot of people don't do.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that is important, is if someone comes out and you don't really understand whether it be their gender identity or their sexuality, it's not a bad idea to do your own research, as long as it's from, you know, places that are actually, what is the word I'm looking for? Reputable,
Credible.
I suppose, not just, some random people on the internet, but sources that actually have, you know, either gone through the experience or have done research on it, etc. Um, because I think for a lot of people coming out and then being bombarded with questions that someone could have looked up themselves is exhausting. It's like, I'm okay answering these questions, but when you have to do it constantly to like tons of people, it's exhausting. Yeah.
So, how did you know that when you were married, or I should say it like this, I guess, what was it that made you be like, okay, I have to tell him? Was it something that kind of snapped, or was it something that grew over time as just a really strong feeling you had, and you were like, I need to bite the bullet and do it?
It was something that it, I don't really know how to word it. Me coming to the realization was something that came over time, but I let him know pretty early on what was going on. And I think he was kind of in denial. He was like, okay, or thought that it wasn't going to end in me needing to transition medically. I'm not sure. But so yeah, it was slowly over time. And then finally, our lease had or was about to end, and we had been looking at uh, new places to move. And after I had been telling him about everything that was going on, and he was still looking for a place, I finally sat him down. I was like, "You understand that I am going to be transitioning, right?" And he was like, "Oh." So I think that finally hit him, and he realized that it was not going to work out, which is fine. I think it's definitely better for both of us. And we've had an amicable separation and divorce and everything.
So when you guys went through the uncertainty of things, like Davina, the different like times where when you were younger and then teenage years and as adulthood, or even Shaw the past couple of years, did you do anything that kind of helped you process it, or for example, support group therapy or art journaling or anything that you found to be kind of to help you get through those times?
Well, for me, it was addiction, so that wasn't a positive thing. But after after I did get sober, I did realize a lot more things about myself that I was trying to push down, or just trying to go with, societal norms. I realized that wasn't really the life path for me. So positive coping mechanisms was just kind of branching out and finding other people that were like me, in a sense, talking to other people that were a part of the LGBTQIA community, and also doing a lot of research has helped, just different aspects of the community. Because then I feel like if you do research on your own community, you can be more accepting of others, and when you do meet people, um, they already feel comfortable with you because you already know about them. That's helped a lot.
for me, as a kid, I would kind of cope with my feelings that I didn't understand by basically, I don't know, I would do a lot of things. I liked to kind of sort of role play Lord of the Rings at recess with my friends. And I would always play male characters, and they would make up their own female characters to play. And I was like, I'm Aragorn. And it was just like weird stuff where I was like, I would always play a guy. And then when I would play video games, I would always be a guy. I was like, this feels nice, but I still didn't understand what was going on. So as a kid, that was kind of what I did. I was like, I'm going to pretend to be someone who looks like a dude. That'll be nice. And
You know
then,
what's
huh?
I was just gonna comment and say what's funny is I used to do the same thing, but I would have friends and we would play like house, and I was always the husband. And it's like because I feel like I'm a more dominant woman in relationships with other women. So I grew up to be that way, but it was just always funny that I was always the husband.
When you guys were growing up, what support did you wish you had from parents or school, maybe like administration or teachers that you think would have helped you?
I think that not that I really felt necessarily lack of support, but I think it would have helped um, if teachers were more open to it. Like if they kind of made a statement, like, this my classroom is a safe space. If there's anything you want to talk about, it doesn't matter what it is, you can always come to me. My daughter now, we just had meet the teacher night, and her teachers are so amazing. It's amazing seeing how teachers are now, because the teachers now are my age, right? So they grew up in that middle ground where they had to face diversity, and it wasn't, they were able to make the change, but when they were younger, they didn't have that change yet. So I feel these kids are very lucky that they have teachers that they're going to be able to come to, even if it's not every teacher. But I just feel like having teachers that could kind of see if a kid was struggling, or see if a kid needed, was being left out from friends, like for me with my own gender, trying to ask the kid why, why do you feel this way? I think it would have just opened up more dialogue, and it would have just been more supportive.
I agree. I think having a place at school where you can come to someone with questions or concerns about yourself is very nice. And I wish that we had that more as kids ourselves. And also, if my family had been, I guess, if they had said something like, I don't know, been, I can't think of words tonight, made it clear that it was okay to come to them with any sort of questions, I suppose. And then maybe I would have, and would have figured things out many, many years ago.
I feel like that growing up, parents just weren't as aware, since it wasn't something that they grew up with.
Right.
So like now I always am looking at my kids and I'm like, are you gay? you know, like, are you gay? Tell me you're gay. No, I'm just kidding. So I just think that growing up, they didn't really know to ask the questions, or what to look for, little signs. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that my dad ever said to me was that I needed to pick one, because one day I'll need to settle down and have a family, and I can't do that with a boy and a girl. But little did he know,
You
you can
could
do whatever you
if you
want.
wanted to. But yeah, I
Oh,
think that's why education on these topics is so important, is because people who didn't go through what we went through, or didn't really grow up knowing a whole lot about the community, wouldn't know how to really educate their kids, or know what to look for, or know how to be accepting. So educating anybody and everybody, regardless of age or circumstances in life, is, I think, an important step to our society being more accepting in general.
yeah. And I'm really grateful for both of you being able to come and share your experiences, because when we can sit down and talk, and Davina, what you said, I think open dialogue, being inclusive of other people's voices and stuff is extremely important, because a lot of times the anger, the hate out there is really from ignorance, from, not knowing, having so much fear from, or misconceptions about this. And I even knew someone that was on their kids' PTA board, and people were against teaching, um, adding to the curriculum, learning about like LGBTQ community plus, because they were thinking, oh, it's going to turn into a sexual thing for kids that are 10 years old. And it's like, no, it's like your kid might be a red crayon, but deep down he feels like a blue crayon. And it can be taught in so many different ways. But again, there's a lot of still stigma and stuff like that. But the more we have these open conversations, the more people can have empathy and understanding. And then finally, I think my last question for you guys is, what advice would you have given to your younger self, or anyone that's going through a situation that's similar to yours?
I think my biggest advice would be, don't just date men, because that's what you're conditioned to do. Because I feel like when you're trying so hard to fit in um, with societal standards, you tend to settle because you're already going against things that you want. So you tend to not make the best choices in partners. So I think if I would have accepted myself sooner, I would have made better choices in the partners. Luckily, I have an amazing husband, um, who I always say is like, the biggest feminist, but it could have went the other way, man.
Yeah, I would tell my younger self to trust myself, that I actually understand myself, if that makes any sense. I spent so long thinking that there was something wrong with me, or that I had somehow done something. I don't know that, but it was just I was different. And if I had trusted myself, and I think found someone to talk to about it, things would have been a lot easier for me growing up.
Oh, thank you so much, Davina and Shaw, for the insight and the life lessons and your whole entire journey. I think this was an amazing conversation, an eye-opening one for people to understand what it's really like and how it's not really just being able to, again, create that open dialogue and allow people to speak and learning from them. And that's where it doesn't have to be scary as something that's seen as a touchy, controversial political topic doesn't have to be so angry and so heavy. It could be just chill like this, where we laugh at things where I'm not sure we should be laughing at.
A bunch of funny gays.
Yeah. Yeah. Always have fun with you guys. Love seeing you guys all the time because we see each other quite often. So, again, thank you so much, really, you guys, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us
Fun.
and opening this conversation up.
And that's a wrap for today's episode, my friend. I hope you were able to learn and take away a lot from this chat. Actually, let me know, DM or comment on our show or on our social media. What's an insightful message you got from this episode from Davina and Shaw? And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on any episodes coming up. And it'll really help us reach more people that need to hear about this. I'd also be really grateful if you left me a review over on Apple and Spotify, as those reviews help other people find my podcast. And remember, the fun does not stop here. It continues over at thehappyhealingshop.com, where you'll find tons of resources, help, and support to help you on your spiritual journey, including blog posts, guides, videos, and more. And until we meet again, my friend, always, always remember to shine your light brightly and to share your story, because you will never know who it can help, give hope to, or inspire to create a change in their own world. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon.